Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 14 of the Vuelta a España, brought to you by Lupine Lights. Lupine Lights, the finest lights I've ridden throughout my career, and I've been riding them since 2019. With the ability to adjust the brightness of each of your settings on the Lupine Lights, you can control how much battery you want to use. And of course, with Bluetooth connectivity and German engineering, you know they're the best quality lights on the market. If you're looking to save 24% on your next lights for your bikes or your personal use, make sure you use the code LupineLights24. Now let's get into today's stage. At 200 kilometers, it's a monster stage in terms of length, but we see there's only two category of climb, and it's the last one that I want to talk about the most right now before we get into the stage, because it's 23 kilometers long, but it's only 4.5%. They called it a Category 1. I don't know if it quite qualifies for a Category 1. Maybe a soft 2 or even a 3 in my book. But at the moment, when it's 23 kilometers long, this is why the organizers made this a Category 1 climb in their classifications here for stage 14, but it's a little ridiculous. When we started looking back and the cameras come on at 135 kilometers to go, we see six riders in the front group, and Xandra Mayus from Alpecin de Koenigs up there. We see Jonathan Narvaez is up there. Isaac Del Toro is there from UAE Team Emirates, Marco Frigo from Israel Premier Tech, Harold Tejada, and my man Victor Campenaerts from Lotto Destiny. He rounds out the six riders up here in this front group. With these six riders and getting a maximum time of what we see is 2.5 minutes, we go back and look at the peloton. Well, who's chasing back there? It's Visma Lease Bike on the front. That's Eduardo Affini and Robert Hessing. These two riders got a tall order right here on stage 14 to be able to keep six riders on a close leash. When we start looking at the six riders cross the finish line on today's stage with 110 kilometers to go, the gap's down to 2 minutes, so Robert Hessing and Eduardo Affini are doing a fantastic job in the back. Now we're coming into 105 kilometers to go, and it's the start of the first category climb. Six riders stay together, and they'll go over the top of the KOM there with Xandra Mayus winning maximum points. We look back, it's still the Peloton Compacto back there, as it's Visma Lease Bike still on the front. Now, they made one mistake here when they're wanting to make it a field sprint here for Wout van Aert. They left Xandra Mayus up in that break, and of course, that's Alpecin de Koenigs. His sprinter, Caden Groves, is one of the two favorites here. Wout van Aert and Caden Groves have been winning stages here throughout the Vuelta a España, multiple numbers. And so when you look at the strategy here from Visma Lease Bike, I'm thinking, wow, two guys pulling on the front. You start remembering that Dylan Van Barley crashed out earlier and got hurt. You start seeing Kjell Uterbrooks hasn't been 100% fit. Sepp Kuss is going to ride for general classification, but we have seen Sepp Kuss help Wout van Aert win a stage here at the Vuelta a España, so maybe we can look at that. But you got to start looking at the top of that Category 1 climb and wondering if Visma Lease Bike will have enough numbers to make it up to the top. Well, we start coming into 50 kilometers to go. It's a sprint line point competition. We see Xandra Mayus ride through that in the front of the group there of the breakaways, and the gap's down to about 1 minute 40 seconds. We look back at the peloton. Affini is throwing everything into it from the sprint line competition all the way to the start of this Category 1 climb with 40 kilometers to go. With every bit of effort he's putting in there, he's doing damage control for Visma Lease Bike so that Hessing, Kjell Uterbrooks, and Steven Kruijswijk don't have to do as much work when they go up this Category 1 climb. As they enter it, we see the six riders in front. Right away, we're going to see my man Victor Campenaerts. We're going to see Xandra Mayus, and we're going to see Del Toro from UAE Team Emirates drop off quickly out of this group of six. That leaves three guys up there. Jonathan Narvaez is going good, and Marco Frigo along with Harold Tejada. Those three riders are still holding about a 1 minute 10 second gap back there on Robert Hessing and Eduardo Affini, who's on the front of the peloton now as he's entering the climb. Once Eduardo Affini enters the climb, though, he's thrown everything into it for the last 10 kilometers to try to reduce the gap. Like I was telling you, he starts to blow, but Steven Kruijswijk there wants his water bottle. So we're going to see that Eduardo Affini pushes back up hard, reaches down for his first water bottle, goes to hand that to Steven Kruijswijk. Well, he must have wanted some different flavor. So Eduardo Affini puts the bottle down, reaches for the next bottle on the down tube there, and hands that over to Steven Kruijswijk. And then Eduardo Affini's job's done here. Tip of the hat on the Butterfly Effect here to Eduardo Affini. This was a magnificent ride on stage 14. As he drops out of the picture, it's time for Hessing to go to work. Hessing gets ready to blow about 2 kilometers after riding the front, slots in the third wheel there with Kjell Uterbrooks on the front, and then decides he's got a little bit more left, so Hessing gets on the front and drives it a little bit more, catches the three riders, the first three that dropped out of the break, so now we just got 3 left up the road. With that in mind, Hessing's just about done and he starts to blow. Once he blows, it's time for Kjell Uterbrooks to go to work. This is where it was getting interesting for me while I was sitting on the Chesterfield, because how much form does Kjell Uterbrooks have? He's been suffering throughout the Vuelta a España here. I've seen him dropped on the first climb of some certain stages, and then I've seen him make it all the way to the last climb of other stages. But right now, Keanu Unterbrook's setting a steady tempo on the front of the group there. And as we get a little bit up further, we're going to see that group of 3 up there turn into 2 as Tejada starts dropping off from Astana. He sees the gaps down to under 30 seconds, so he knows as his day's done here on stage 14. He drops off, and Keanu Unterbrook's a wrap up Tejada. With that in mind, Keanu Unterbrook is starting to suffer, but he's been on the front for about 8-9 kilometers, and it's time for Keanu Unterbrook to pull off. As he does, Steven Kruijswijk gets on the front. Now we start looking up at the front of the 2-rider break up there. We see Jonathan Narvaez is throwing in attack, and this is going to pop off the back there. Marco Frigo, as he's coming out the back for Israel Premier Tech. Jonathan Narvaez is going solo. Now at this moment, I don't know if I want to go solo, because at the top of the climb, you still got about 16, 17 kilometers to go down the descent before you can get to the finish of stage 14. So now it's looking like Visma the bike's plan is looking pretty decent. But I started to wonder, can somebody start attacking? Well, Keanu Unterbrook, while he was pulling on the front, he was doing about 35 kilometers an hour while he's on the front. So this is a fast, big chain ring climb. There's no doubt about it. If you look at the front group there of Narvaez on the front, he's pulling big chain ring. The guys in the back, Steven Kruijswijk, he's pulling big chain rings. So we'll go back up front. Narvaez starts getting wrapped up with about 3 kilometers to go. As he gets wrapped up, Theo Gegenhardt gets on the front for Lidl Trek. Now, what's Theo Gegenhardt thinking? Well, they got kind of a sprinter too, because it's Vasek up there, who was second on the individual time trial and has run decent top 5s in the individual at the sprint stages here, at the Vuelta a España. So, with Theo Gegenhardt riding the front, he's going to do, well, we'll call it about 2 kilometers, kilometer and a half on the front. Then it starts getting nervous as everyone wants to go curb to curb. Once it's nervous, the speed's going high. The peloton's still fairly large in size because, like I said, it's all big chainring. This certainly is in a Category 1 climb. Now, we go over the top of the KOM. We see it's Wout van Aert getting maximum points. He was already leading the KOM jersey, but he's wearing the sprint jersey, the green jersey, as he crosses over and keeps his KOM jersey here with a little bit of a buffer for some more points on today's stage 14. Now they drop down the descent, and you see the peloton's a little split up back there, and as they're coming into this right turn, you see the 2 riders drifting off to the left side. That's Primoz Roglič and Danny Martinez. Now the cameras come into the face view looking back there at Primoz Roglič and Danny Martinez as they're pulling over to the left side of the road. Primoz Roglič got a rear flat. Danny Martinez is his teammate. You see he's got the gel in his mouth, so this was not a planned change. Normally you're supposed to change on the right side of the road, but instead they got to change on the left, and I can tell you why. At these speeds, when you're coming down a wide descent like this, through these kind of corners, the group's easily doing 90 kilometers an hour, something close to 60 miles an hour. So if you got a rear flat, you got to change whatever side of the road you got to change on. So that's why we see Primoz Roglič and Danny Martinez coming together. And they're coming together so tight that Primoz Roglič can barely get off his bike. Swings his legs over. We see Danny Martinez hand him his bike, and then Primoz Roglič jumps off on Danny Martinez's bike and starts going down the descent. Now we see the mechanic. Take a look of why you always want to change on the right side of the road and not the left. When the mechanic door is opening, you see the leg there of the mechanic, you got to believe that if the group is doing 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour down this descent, coming into this turn, if the mechanic opens up the door to the outside there, to the right side of the car, into the traffic there, well, the mechanic could get wiped out by a car quickly. It's a catastrophic problem to change on the left side of the road here at the European Peloton. Mechanic hopefully looked back before he opened the door. He jumps out, comes around to the driver's side, grabs a bike there for Danny Martinez, and gives him the bike, and Danny Martinez is off. Now the cameras start finding Primoz Roglič. He's got a teammate, but if the teammate's off the back there, that's Giovanni back there, who's been doing fabulous work for Primoz Roglič, but Roglič just flew straight by him, the Slovenian, as he's not wasting any time. You do not want to waste time when you're coming down this descent, because the group, as I've already told you, is doing 60 miles an hour up front. Lidl Trek was up there. They're not interested in pushing the pace, but just how fast the peloton can go with natural speed coming down this descent is so fast that Primoz Roglič, the bikes don't go over 60, 65 miles an hour by yourself. So Primoz Roglič has to make up time wherever he can. We see he's got another teammate in front of him as Giovanni's having a little bit of problem back there, making up the gap back up to Primoz Roglič. And that should be Vlas off in front, or just behind Primoz Roglič. Now they start coming into the caravan there, which is a little bit safer for Primoz Roglič. But as I said, there's only so fast these road bikes can go. You start getting over 60 miles an hour, you're in trouble. We come into this next left turn. Giovanni knows he's in trouble. As you see, the road's a little rough there, and you see him have to readjust his bike to keep it upright as he goes through the left turn. Luckily, he does keep his bike upright, and the Bora Hansgrohe rider keeps chasing as we see Primoz Roglič has teammates in front of him. We start coming in about 7 kilometers ago. We see Primoz Roglič is getting into the back of the group there, and he's passing the red official car, which means it's the peloton directly in front of him. As he starts catching the back of the peloton itself is having its own problems with splits, so Primoz Roglič got to do a little bit more work. But with about 5.5, 6 kilometers to go, Primoz Roglič is sitting in 50th position. So now the red alarm bells are stopped going off here for Primoz Roglič and Bora Hansgrohe as he's in a fine position. We start coming into 5 kilometers ago. We see it's Alpecin de Koenig on the front. They got 6 riders. It'll take about 1.2, 1.1 kilometer after that, so we're getting under 4 kilometers to go. We see Alpecin de Koenig's front rider. He starts to pull off hard to the right, but let me back the film up just a hair because the second place rider there was looking back over his shoulder. Now we go forward. We see the first place rider from Alpecin de Koenig. He looked back over his shoulder, but now he's pulling off hard to the right, and he's taking his second place teammate with him. Well, luckily no crash is happening at this moment because the speeds are still high, but we see the Alpecin de Koenig rider wave his arm through, and that's it for him. Now we got 5 Alpecin de Koenig riders on the front. 2 of them are rotating through with each other. The last 3 they're saving for the sprint. As we see, Caden Groves is there. Just behind Caden Groves is Wout van Aert. And we know Wout van Aert's a big-time favorite along with Caden Groves. So with Alpecin de Koenig on the front, I'm thinking, ooh, getting on the front from 5 kilometers to go when you didn't absolutely have to at that moment seemed to be a little premature. And now we're coming into 1.8 kilometers to go, and this is exactly what I thought might happen as we see DSM coming up the center of the road there on the left side of Alpecin de Koenig. They got 3 riders. It's Pavel Bittner is their sprinter, and he's won stages here at the Vuelta a España. So as we see the 3 riders from DSM coming up, well, the 2 riders, they go over to the left side, and that pinches off their sprinter there, Pavel Bittner. As the 2 DSM riders take over the front, we start looking behind them. It's UAE Team Emirates back there. That's Sivakov, and it's their sprinter, Baroncini, up there, who's sitting second wheel behind Sivakov, 4th in the position here of the peloton. We see that Alpecin de Koenig get a little bit swarmed. They're getting a little bit lost. We're coming through some roundabouts at 1.3 kilometers to go, which will thin the peloton out. Now we come under 1 kilometer to go. We see that it's DSM still on the front, but at 9:50, the front rider's starting to blow. Once he starts blowing, we see the peloton's kind of increasing a little bit. They're about 4 or 5 wide, and we're coming into about 900, 950 meters to go, and Edward Plankert, it's time to thread the needle. As he starts coming from the left side through the center, all the way through the right, he's threading the needle there, and we see Caden Groves give a bump to the Cofidis rider. Next up, the Cofidis rider's day is not done here, as we're going to see Wout van Aert bump the Cofidis rider too, and then Asketel Eskedy's going to bump the Cofidis rider too. We look up front, Edward Plankert's got the lead. We see Caden Groves sitting second, and then we see Wout van Aert, but he's got some dilemma here because we're coming into about 700 meters to go where there's a left turn. That dilemma is UAE Team Emirates. It's Sivakov. He's sitting on the front. Filippo for his sprinter that's just behind him. And behind Wout van Aert, well, that rider there is Pavel Bittner from DSM. As they come into this left turn, though, the 2 Alpecin de Koenig riders make it through 1 and 2. Edward Plankert leading out Caden Groves. But we see Wout van Aert has a little bit of a problem as Sivakov's coming through the inside. Wout van Aert knows he's got to back off the throttle a little bit because if Sivakov swings inside to outside, which they like to do, but Sivakov's not really a lead-out man, so he doesn't. He holds up a little bit, leaves a little bit of space there for Wout van Aert to come up the right side along the fencing, but the problem is he's opened up a gap there to Caden Groves. We start looking up front, and we see that it's Edward Plankert on the front still. He's starting to accelerate. Wout van Aert has to close the gap. He's got Pavel Bittner on his wheel. And behind him, a host of riders with Vasek there from Lidl Trek. And behind Vasek, that's Corbin Strong. But we see UAE Team Emirates as they started to blow. Wout van Aert's closed up, as I've said. Now we're coming in about 400 meters to go. Edward Plankert's going from the right side of the road to the left side of the road. He hits 300 meters to go, and Edward Plankert's got something left in the legs. This is a 4 or 5% drag all the way from that left turn up to the finish. So we're talking about 600 meters of a drag going up to the finish at 4 or 5%. Now we're 300 meters to go. Edward Plankert is throwing in his big last acceleration here for Caden Groves. He starts coming up to about 200 meters to go. We look at Pavel Bittner from DSM. He starts to blow. His head drops, and the gap starts to open up to Wout van Aert. But Wout van Aert's got someone in front of him called Caden Groves who's sitting second wheel on Ed Plankert's wheel. And we're coming in 200 meters to go. Now we're at 175. Caden Groves throws in a huge acceleration going up the left side. Edward Plankard left just enough room for Caden Groves to come up through the left side between the fencing himself, and we're hitting about 150 meters ago when Wout van Aert has to jump and attack around the right side of Edward Plankard and Caden Groves. They'll meet after passing Edward Plankard with about 100 meters to go. It's tight. We start going into 75 meters to go. Wout van Aert's got a lead. 60 meters to go. You start seeing the crosswalk right there, and it looks almost even, but Wout van Aert's probably got about a centimeter lead. We go into 50 meters to go. We're going dead even. 30 meters to go. Looks like Caden Groves might have a bit of a lead. Then we come into 5 meters to go. Caden Groves starts to throw his bike. Wout follows it shortly afterwards, but Caden Groves wins today's stage 14 of the Vuelta a España. Wout van Aert will wrap up second. Third on the stage would be Corbin Strong from Israel Premier Tech. And if I back the film up a little bit to show you where Corbin Strong came from, it was quite impressive because he had to come back from about 7th, 8th position once Bittner blew at about 200 meters. We look back there, Corbin Strong had to do a nice ride coming all the way around Vasek and Bittner to come up and get a podium here on stage 14. Now the general classification didn't change at all. We see the race leader's red jersey finishing in the front group. And of course, Primož Roglič finishes up there just behind the race leader's red jersey, so he stays second on the general classification. Tomorrow, stage 15 should be an incredibly exciting one with multiple climbs, 4 climbs, and an HC climb, and a real HC climb on tomorrow, stage 15. So can Ben O'Connor hold on to the race leader's red jersey tomorrow? Well, he's going to have better legs than he had yesterday. Primož Roglič, Bora Hansgrohe team, if I'm AG2R, I'm making those guys ride the whole day. I'm not riding at all because if you're Ben O'Connor, you do not want Primož Roglič to reach an HC climb and have his whole fresh mountain climbers ready to go from the bottom of that climb all the way to the top. Because if you got Giovanni riding good, Roger Adria riding good, you got Danny Martinez, who looks like he's getting a little bit better here with each passing of the stages of the Vuelta a España. Vlasov could be coming a little bit sharper too. Had some problems on the descent here when he was trying to get Primož Roglič back on, but he did look better the other day and was at the front of the peloton. So if you're AG2R, you gotta hope that you can get at least 1 or 2 of these climbers that Primož Roglič has for teammates of Bora Hansgrohe. You got to get them on the front before you hit that HC climb so that when they start going for team train up that last climb, hopefully Primož Roglič doesn't have as much help as he had on yesterday's stage 13. Or Ben O'Connor's going to be in big-time problems, and we're going to see the race leader's red jersey change hands to Bora Hansgrohe when it's at the end of the day after stage 15. If AG2R cannot ride tactically the right way in tomorrow's stage 15, and of course, Ben O'Connor needs to have fantastic legs. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys for stage 15 real soon.